Hey guys, Connor McCaffrey here. So starting off, talking about ensuring that you're reaching all the various learning styles in your classroom. This is a very, very important thing to think about as a teacher because, we teach a diverse group of students. They're, diverse in their demographics, in their learning styles, in every aspect. So you need to get to know your students and get to know them on a deeper level, as deep as you can, to make sure you can teach them to the best of your ability, to set them up for success, because as teachers we want all of our students to succeed. That's our job. So doing this, a way that I've had this done in my classrooms before is my teachers will start off the school year by having us fill out a questionnaire about ourselves where we can, say things such as our learning style, or even something like, any brothers or sisters, pets we have. We get to share a fun fact about ourselves, where we like to sit in the classroom. Do we do better sitting at the front of the classroom? And that always helped me growing up, because I felt like it let my teachers learn things about me that they might not otherwise learn. And I want to do something similar to that in my classroom, and my kids can share what type of learning style they have, what has worked for them in the past. Is it, working in groups, working, with math blocks to work out a math problem? Is it me explaining it? Do they sometimes need some more one-on-one attention because I want to give that to my students. I want to do whatever I can to help them succeed, and I can't do that unless I know, what works best for them. Maybe also have them tell me what hasn't worked in the past, so it's something I can maybe try and avoid or minimize to the best of my ability. So then they would write this out, and then I would review all of my students' responses and look for patterns. Are a lot of my students kinesthetic learners? Do they work better hands-on? If so, then maybe I try and do a lot of those type activities to accommodate to my students. Do a lot of my students say that they don't like it when the teacher just gets up and explains everything? Then maybe that's something I minimize in my classroom. You need to make sure you're not appealing to just one type of learning, whether it be visual, auditory, kinesthetic. I think you need to have a healthy balance of each. So for example, if I'm teaching a new math concept, I might go in front of the class and verbally explain it to them, explain its function, maybe, say a few real life examples of it. So that'll appeal to my auditory learners. And then for my visual learners, I can go on the smartboard or the whiteboard and do a couple examples by hand, and so they can see step by step how I did it. So yes, that's my visual learners. And then for my kinesthetic learners, my ones who need to learn hands-on, I pass out some blocks or whatever it may be, so that way they can work it out using their hands, using the blocks, and see it be worked out that way. So that's just an easy way that I hit all three of the learning styles. And that's a very easy thing to do. Maybe I have students who, as soon as I explain it, they understand it, and that's fine. They can still go on and do the rest. But then for some of my students, it might not fully click until they get to do that hands-on activity with the blocks. So I want to make sure I'm setting up all my students for success, and they all have an equal opportunity to understand the concept and to learn it. I have always been a mixture of the learning styles myself. I like to see things worked out, and I like to see examples, but I also like to work hands-on. So I can't expect my students to learn it after one type of, after just explaining it to them, verbally, if I can't learn that way myself. Another way that I thought of to reach the various learning styles is to provide my students with options of how they want to learn. Take a vote in the class of how they want to do this activity or do this assignment, or when I give them an assignment or a project, give them options for how they can complete it. If it's a book report, maybe I give them the opportunity to write a report, or give them the opportunity to do a picture diagram or do a diorama of, for the book. And that way they are still exhibiting that they know the content and they know the material, but they're doing it in a way that's best for them. And it gives them the power and some control over their learning, which I think is very important. And I think that they should have that control. So then moving on, the role of graphic organizers in learning. I think graphic organizers are amazing and necessary tools to use in the classroom. They allow students to visually display their knowledge, and instead of just thinking it through in their head, which I can't, I don't see what's going on in their head, I don't see their thought process, but using a graphic organizer, I can see their thought process, and they can too, and they might pick up on things that they would easily overlook without doing the graphic organizer. They might know more than they thought they did, and they can see the connections and connect to previous knowledge, or connect to, maybe like 2 different books, and by doing the graphic organizer, they can see the connections visually in front of them. I think when we're doing things, sometimes we just go too fast and we overlook things, and this can help me as the teacher to see their thought process and to see where they might be overlooking things, and it also helps them too. So I think it has that dual purpose there. And especially with ideas or concepts that are more complex, this, even for students who might think this is redundant to, go step by step in the graphic organizer, I think it can be very helpful in their learning process that way. And lastly, the last topic that I wanted to discuss was things to consider when you're implementing computers in your classroom. I think we live in a very technologically advanced society. We're always growing, and nowadays, most kids have tablets and computers and smartphones and all of that, and I think that's great because I think technology is awesome and we should utilize it. But I think when using it in the classroom, you need to be cautious and be aware, and there are many things you need to consider. First and foremost, I think we need to be intentional in everything we do in the classroom. We need to be intentional teachers, and I think that starts with asking what is the use of computers in my classroom going to do for my students? How is it going to benefit them? What are they going to take away from using computers that they wouldn't take away otherwise? Because we need to do everything with a purpose and with a goal in mind. And if we're just going to use computers as a way to fill up class time, and my students aren't going to learn anything that they couldn't learn otherwise, then I shouldn't be using them. So I think they need to be used, but they need to be used with a purpose and a goal in mind, as does everything in our classroom. Every lesson we do, every activity we do, every homework assignment we do, every video we show needs to be done with a purpose, and that applies to computers as well. You also need to consider how engaged your students will be using the computers. Kids are kids. Kids get bored easily. Their minds wander. They might not have that large of an attention span. So whatever computer activity they're doing, they need to be engaged, because if they're not, they might start using the computers in ways that they shouldn't, play games, research things they shouldn't be, and you don't want that, because they're a very positive tool. You don't want to turn them into a negative one. Another thing that you need to consider is not all your students might be on the same level with their ability to use a computer. Most days, like I said, most students will have a computer at home, or a tablet, or a smartphone, so they're familiar with using technology. But you have to keep in mind that a lot of your students might not. They might only see computers and see devices when they're in school, but when they get home, they don't have any access to it. So you need to start off your computer lessons with a tutorial on how to use the computer, or whatever computer program you're doing. So that way all your students are on the same page. You won't have a student who's falling behind just because he simply doesn't know how to do it. He might know the material, but he just might not know how to use the computer, and you don't want him to suffer because of that. So you've got to make sure all your students are on the same page when it comes to that. And lastly, I think you want to make sure that your computer time is not outweighing, let's say, your group work time in your classroom, because like I said previously, computers and technology is a big part of our society, but so is social interaction. You need to make sure that your students are still getting that time to work together, and they're not just focused on a screen for the entire class day, because I think just as technology is important, so is being able to problem solve and work together in a group. I think it's equally as important to know how to do that. So yeah, computers are great. Just make sure that you consider all of those things, and remember to always be an intentional teacher and be intentional with everything you do. Thanks, guys.